Hare Krishna, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Krishna's Stories. And we are on our third story out of the hundreds and thousands and millions of stories and pastimes and little adventures which Krishna went on each day that he was here on this planet 5,000 years ago. And today we're discussing a very special adventure. So, like all the other days, today, Krishna set out in the morning, and as you can see from this beautiful painting, now they were 6 year old, all the cowherd boys, and so they were very excited. They entered this new age group called the Pauganda age, and this age group allowed them for the first time to take the cows out to graze. This far they had only taken calves, the little tiny calves with them. But now that they were older, 6 years old, they were now taking these big, huge cows and bulls and full grown. So now they could handle the entire herd by themselves. And they were very excited. So Krishna, Balram, and the cowherd boys, and thousands of them set out together. One second. That had disappeared for some reason.
Bro, you're good.
Okay, so they had set they had they set out into the Vrindavan forest, carrying all these thousands of cows and their friends, and they took such good care of the cows and the calves. Vrindavan was actually very opulent, very prosperous. They were wealthy in natural resources, and they were actually very wealthy in rich amount of grains and all kinds of food and all kinds of things to eat and a lot of land and such amazing place to stay and their houses and everything. So it was very prosperous. In fact, it was described that each of the cows was so beautifully decorated. Their horns were gold plated, their tails were tied with peacock feathers and pearls and jewels, and around their necks hung the 9 jewels, the Navaratna garlands. And they were also given flower garlands around their horns, around their feet, and they were so beautifully decorated. Some were painted, and the cows were all of different colors, red and yellow and multicolored and smoke colored and gray colored and the sky colored and white. And each cow had an individual name, which Krishna and Balaram and each cowherd boy knew each of the cows by their names. And they were so personal with each of these cows, and each of these cows had a way they would walk, a way they would respond, what kind of grass they like to eat. And Krishna and the cowherd boys knew their individual choices and catered to them exactly in the way they wanted to. Each cow even liked a different way to be petted and stroked. Each cow liked a different way in which they liked to lie down with Krishna. And this was their joy. The cows had been waiting for so many years. When will Krishna grow up and he will take us to graze? And finally, the cows and their calves and the bulls and all the other animals, there were also actually sheep and goat and so many others which used to go out with Krishna along with the cows and the cows, and in this way a huge happy army of little cowherd men, cowherd boys and cows set out for the Vrindavan forest. As they approached the forest each day, something beautiful happened. Something Vrindavan was ever increasing in its variety, ever increasing in its happiness, and it gave as much happiness as Vrindavan could, to all the cowherd boys and the cows by growing beautiful, luscious grasses, and the river and Yamuna was flowing by. And today, everything was looking so beautiful. Krishna called Balaramji, his elder brother. He put his arm around him and he said, "Look, Look, dear brother, look. Can you see these beautiful trees laden with fruit? How they're bowing so low to touch your feet. And these trees, they must be great sages and saints in their past lives that they have got the fortune that they are seeing you and that they're able to witness your pastimes and your adventures. And look, can you see all these bees and bumblebees who are trying to surround you, and they have left the lotuses. They don't want to drink the nectar from the lotus because they're drinking the nectar of your beauty. And they just don't want to leave this place. And see, can you see these beautiful grasses and creepers and herbs and stones? They're so happy because today they have been marked by your lotus feet. And they're feeling joyful, they're feeling that's the success of their life, and they're guarding these marks of your feet as their most treasured object. And can you see the deer? How they're looking at you lovingly, like a lover waiting for a beloved. They just aren't taking their eyes off you. And look at these peacocks and look at all these birds and the cuckoos, and they just can't stop singing because they want to please you. In this way, Krishna was making Balaram so happy. Although all this was happening for Krishna, but he didn't want to take the credit for it. He didn't want to, he always wanted to serve Balaram and all the cowherd boys and everyone else. So Krishna in this way was showing this to Balaram, and every time he said something, all the cowherd boys together would roar, "Yes, it is true. Balramji, Jai, Hari Bol." Everyone would, and Balaram would be embarrassed and he would say, "No, no, no." And then Krishna would go on and say something else. And in this way, very beautifully, they all went through the forest. And every time they saw a new kind of fruit, a new kind of bird, a new kind of flower, it was ever increasing variety. And when they would see something, they would say, "Krishna, look at this. We have never seen this before." And all the cowherd boys with their curious eyes would gather around. Sometimes a butterfly, sometimes a little flower, sometimes a tree, wondering where did this tree come from? And then they would be happy and they would enjoy and play, and they had all kinds of games. Today they decided that they were going to imitate the sounds of the birds. Last time we discussed how they imitated the animals. Today they were imitating the sounds of the birds. And Krishna started imitating the dance of the peacock. And as he was dancing, the peacocks danced better, and then he danced better, and soon there was a competition, and everyone was cheering. Some were cheering for Krishna, some were cheering for the peacocks, and sometimes the peacocks, they would laugh, "Oh, Krishna can't dance," and Krishna would purposely a little bit trip himself and fall down, and sometimes Krishna would dance so beautifully that the peacocks would be embarrassed and put their feathers down, and Krishna would say, "I have taught this king of birds how to dance." And then all the cowherd boys would cheer, and they would take Krishna on their shoulders and they would go about. And then sometimes some of the boys saw the cuckoos, and all of them coo, coo, coo. They started cooing, all of them together. And sometimes the swans. And sometimes one boy would say, "Not like that, that's wrong." And the other boy would say, "Why did you say that? That's wrong." And they would start a mock fight. And soon all the boys would be punching and kicking and beating each other in play and laughing and joking. And Krishna and Balram would cheer them and say, "Yes, that's right. Do this. Hold them like this. Do this." And finally, one of the cowherd boys would say, "Wait a minute. Who are you to tell us this? Come here, Krishna." And Krishna would say, "Are you sure you want to wrestle with me? You know what I did to that huge demon, and you know what I did to that huge demon?" The coward boy would look at him as though none of that ever happened. And the boy would say, come here, and I'll show you who's really strong." And he and Krishna would engage in a really intense fight. And all the other coward boys were waiting and wondering, and some were saying, "Krishna, do this," and others were saying, "Krishna's weakness, do this." And finally, every time Krishna would lose, and the cowherd boy would get up. "I knew it." All those, I don't know how you do that, but I'm the real deal. I have the real power. I think it's because we are cheering you on that every time you kill these big monsters, and actually we give you that confidence, and actually we know if you can't handle it, we are always there. So next time. And then Krishna would be so happy, and then they would play again for some time and go here and go there. And sometimes the cows, they would wander far away. And the boys were so engrossed in their games and everything, and they would suddenly realize, hey, we are grown up boys now. We've been given the responsibility of these big cows. Where are they? Where are they? And Krishna would take out his flute and start playing the flute. And Krishna's flute playing was so unique. He played a different tune for every individual cow simultaneously. Each cow heard her favorite tune, which she liked on Krishna's flute. And she would pick up her ears, and they could not help it but be drawn, completely hypnotized by the love of Krishna's sound from his flute. And they would come running to Krishna. And in this way, Krishna had no trouble. No matter how far which cow had gone to graze, they would all come running back and come and lie at Krishna's feet, and all of them would come. And the cowherd boys would sometimes hug them, sometimes scold them. Don't go away. What will our parents say? And we have to be responsible now. This is your area to graze. Don't go far away. And then the playing would continue. And then they would now they were playing so much sometimes that they would get tired. And Balramji would say, enough. I can't take this anymore. I need to rest. And he would lie down. And immediately one of the cowherd boys would say, oh, the great king wants to sleep. The king wants to sleep. And Balramji would lie down. And all the other cowherd boys would come. Some would fan him. Some would make some items. Some would really feed him something. Some would massage his feet. Some would read to him the news of the forest deer king. And they were all so happy serving Balramji in this way. And after some time, he would stretch and yawn and get up and say, I am refreshed. Now I can play a lot more. And sometimes Krishna would get tired and he would sit down and everyone would surround him, and sometimes another cowherd boy. In this way, all of them were playing and then resting and laughing and joking in the middle, eating something in the middle, teasing each other. Now today, since it was a very special day, the cowherd boys approached Krishna and Balaram, and they said, my dear Krishna, my dear Balaram, do you know that we haven't seen everything in Vrindavan? And there is a very special fruit. This fruit is so famous. Even the demigods are waiting to taste this fruit, but no one can taste this fruit. And Krishna would say, why can no one taste this fruit? We can taste this fruit. Where is this fruit? And then the boys would say, listen, listen. This fruit is called a tala fruit. And it is only found in this entire universe. It is only found in the Talavan, the Tal forest. But do you know why nobody has ever tasted this fruit before? By now they had described the fruit, how it's so juicy and how it tastes, and there's nothing that nobody has ever tasted as good as this fruit. And by now all the cowherd boys, their only interest was, we want this fruit, we want this fruit. And Balramji and Krishna would say, yes, we are going to get this fruit. Sridama, tell us, what is the way to go there? Sridama said, wait, aren't you going to ask why no one has ever tasted this fruit? So Balramji would say, all right, why has no one tasted this fruit? And Sridama said, because there is a very terrible monster guarding this fruit. And this fruit is only exclusively delivered to Kamsa, the most evil and dangerous and powerful king of this earth. We've heard, in fact, his kingdom is quite near. Now, I would suggest, let's drop this idea and let's continue to eat all the thousands of fruits which we have to eat. And even while saying this, Sridama knew he didn't really want to discourage them. He was just trying to make it more exciting. And Balramji said, what? We will give up this fruit because of some monster? Who is this monster? Then Sridama would say, well, he's a donkey. And everyone burst, a donkey, They were holding their stomachs and laughing. And Krishna was saying, really, are you scared of a donkey? No way, we are going to get this fruit. And then all the coward, their only goal and ambition, and even the cows and calves had caught on by now. Even they weren't interested in the grass anymore. They said, we too only want the tal fruit. And all of them proudly walking towards this Talavan forest. But some of the boys really knew this wasn't just a donkey. And they really tried to dissuade. They said, Balramji, Krishna, no, this is serious. This is not just another donkey. He is such a powerful monster. He's a mystic and he lives in the form of a donkey with hundreds and thousands of such other donkeys. They are so powerful, not even the lions and elephants enter that part of the forest. Not even the demigods have gone there. And these donkeys, they don't eat grass and hay and fruit. They eat human beings. Every now and then along the highways near the forest, these human beings disappear and these donkeys eat them. These are really dangerous donkeys. Let's not do this. In fact, we've heard even birds are afraid to fly above this part of the forest. Krishna, Balram, it's okay. It was a joke. Now let's just tell the boys something else. By now, Balram was so intent on eating that fruit only for the purpose of pleasing Krishna. Whenever they heard something was very, very good, their only thought was, how can Krishna not have this? There's no question of us not getting this for Krishna. They had no concern really of them eating it. But if they had told Krishna that we want this for you, then he would have said, no, we aren't going, I don't want this, we'll go back. So therefore they kept saying, we want it. Knowing that if they said we want it, then Krishna would have to agree and oblige and go along. And then they would get it for Krishna. So in this way, this entire army of cowherd boys was on their new mission of getting the fruit from the forest. Finally, they reached the edge of Talvan. And when they reached the edge of Talvan, by now, the cowherd boys really knew they aren't dealing with an ordinary donkey. All of them had stopped. There was no more sound. There was no more birds chirping. It looked so different and dark, cold and sad and depressing. And suddenly they all stopped and they were looking at each other. Who's going to go? And in fact, they started taking a step behind. And then Balaramji tied his waistcloth. And he said, I will go in. And he entered. As he entered and the twigs cracked beneath his feet, the cowherd boys were scared with every sound. They were wondering, this is really scary. Who's going to come? What is this donkey? And then they started, some were blaming each other and said, why didn't you tell us you just said it's a donkey. And some boys said, we told you these are real terrible donkeys. And some would say, shh, they will come. Just let Balramji, just bring one. It's okay. We'll go back. And then Balramji, he went and he saw this huge tree. And when he looked up, he saw these beautiful tal fruit. And once he saw them, he said, I am going to feed all the boys and Krishna this tal fruit. That's my firm determination. And he caught this tree, this little 6-year-old boy caught this tree with his 2 hands. The same little boy who takes the incarnation of Ananta Shesh with millions of hoods holds up this entire universe on one of those hoods, and such millions of universes on millions of hoods. And that same Ananta who takes another form and on whom lies Vishnu, the ocean of milk. And that same Ananta who takes so many different forms, who's always chanting the Vedic hymns, that same Ananta is just an incarnation of Balaram. And this little boy Balaram, when he decided to shake a tree or he wanted some fruit, who could have ever stopped him? And he caught this tree and with all his strength, he started shaking the tree. And as he shook, all these tal fruits started falling, and as soon as they fell, they were so ripe and so sweet and so fragrant and they little bit cracked open, just a little bit, because they were really ripe. And the fragrance hit, the aroma hit the noses of the cows and the calves and the children. They went wild, and they bounced out onto these fruit, and they started. And the minute they tasted the fruit, Krishna, you have to taste this. What have we been missing? How could we not? And they start throwing it to each other and eating it and throwing it at each other and Krishna. And while all this was going on, suddenly they heard the most terrifying sound they've ever heard in their life. Like a ear-piercing brain. Such a loud and terrifying sound that the cowherd boys dropped all their fruit and ran. They didn't know where they're going, and they ran here and there. And this huge, terrible looking donkey came there. He was braying so loudly, and his breath, the aroma of the tal fruits, was subdued by the stink of his breath and his body, which was so dirty and stinking. And this donkey was so enraged, his eyes were red, flaming, and he was so angry that little boys dared do this, at least if it was someone worthy of trying to get my fruit. These little boys, he was so upset. And he decided he's going to kill and crush and eat each and every one of them. And he saw this little 6-year-old boy who looked white like a fresh cloud. And he was so beautiful and effulgent. He thought, I'm going to eat him in one bite. And he ran towards Balaram and kicked him with all his strength with his hind legs, as a donkey does, on his chest. And Balramji did not even flinch. There was not even a... He was so engrossed in shaking the trees, collecting the fruit and throwing them to the cowherd boys and eating them and giving Krishna, he didn't even flinch. And when the second time Dhenuka kicked with all his strength, his name was Dhenukasur. I forgot that important detail. And when Dhenukasur kicked for the second time, at that time Balramji knew, oh, there's someone or something else trying to get my attention. And then he saw this terrible monster. And Balramji was so fixed on feeding his friends and feeding Krishna, he didn't have time. He didn't have time to waste. He caught this huge donkey by his hind legs and started twirling and twirling and twirling him around. He twirled him so hard that while he twirled the donkey, this huge ass monster, the donkey lost his life and flew far away and landed on a tree. And as he landed on this tree, the tree fell, and this ass, because of the weight of this ass, the donkey, the tree fell on another tree and another tree and another tree, and there was a domino effect. And so many trees started falling. They were all tal trees, and some were palm trees and different trees. And the boys were so happy. And when the leader of these donkeys died, all these other donkeys came out running, and they started seeing these two boys with such anger. What? You killed Dhenuka? You killed our leader? They all started attacking, and some attacked Krishna and some attacked Balram, and both of them just cut their hind legs and threw them. And now it became another game. And all the cowherd boys picked up tal fruit, and they sat around, and some were screaming and shouting and yelling, and some were saying, Krishna behind you, yeah, that one, throw him there, Balramji there. And they were so happy and excited. And these donkeys were quite entertaining because they were horrible looking, and they were so powerful and so terrifying. And yet, when the minute they reached Krishna and Balram, they became like little dolls in their hands. And so it was so amazing to see this sudden transformation. They were powerless in the hands of time personified Krishna and the sustenance of everything Balaram. They had absolutely no power, and they were all in different colors. So soon the entire forest of this Talavan looked so beautiful with these huge, gigantic, colorful clouds lying in the top of these trees, some fallen and some standing. And now the demigods and sages got the news that this Talavan has opened. This terrible donkey is dead. And the animals started coming in, the birds came in, and very soon the same presence of Vrindavan entered this forest. And the cowherd boys had such a good time eating these fruits, and they were so happy and so excited and so joyful. And they said, today we're going to take all these fruits for our parents and feed them, and they're also going to have an amazing time. And then they all sat and they had a big feast of tal fruit. And some ate so much they couldn't move. Some were lying on their backs, some were lying on their bellies, some were trying to compete with each other. I had 55, you had 56, and all kinds of things were going on, and they were so happy. And Talman was thus opened for everyone. And that evening, when they came back home, excitedly to tell everyone of this new adventure, and Yashoda and all the gopis and the parents and everyone gathered there to hear. And whenever the adults would hear any of these stories, in their minds, when the children described, Mata Yashoda, do you know the size of this donkey? We couldn't even see where his mane was. And the sound he made, it was so terrifying. And Yashoda was hearing, oh, and a little donkey came and he brayed and he ran away. And that's all she heard. She thought these are all stories. How can my little boy, who, when thunder and lightning strikes, who's running into my sari and into my clothes scared, what is he going to do with all these big monsters? And she said, these boys really entertain us nicely. And she would tell us more. Then what happened? And then what happened? Oh, what did Krishna do? What did Balram do? And then the next day, cowherd man also went into the forest and enjoyed these fruit. And in this way, Krishna and Balaram put an end to this monster named Dhenuka. And in one very beautiful book called written by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he compares this monster to the selfishness in our heart, where sometimes the selfishness makes us only want things for ourselves, and we don't want to share, and we don't want to give, and we don't want to allow or be happy at anybody enjoying anything else. And so Krishna comes into our hearts to remove this selfish mentality and make our heart as beautiful as Vrindavan. Thank you very much. And next time, we are going to see this beautiful story, which I will leave you with a little suspense, of the poisoned lake. The next day, the cowherd boys went, and they almost died because they drank the water of the Yamuna unknowingly. It was so poisonous, and they all fell unconscious. And you'll see that story on Wednesday. Thank you for joining. May your heart be filled with these Krishna stories, which are really soothing to the soul and really actually are home for the soul with Krishna in Vrindavan. May you have wonderful Krishna dreams. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Karuna Gauranga. Thank you for a beautiful narration.
Thank you.
Hey, ball.